So let's talk about the definition, nature, and scope of philosophy. So, first, what do we really mean by philosophy? So, philosophy often gets this impression of being completely detached from the world, such that its inquiries are often full of abstract topics. For example, what does it mean to be good? What is good? What is the truth? And what is the beautiful? And what is the meaning of life? I mean, from face value, it really looks like it has no tangible, sensible meaning, because in your day-to-day life, life goes on, you wake up, you do something, you sleep, and whether or not you ask this kind of questions, you won't explode or what. Nothing's gonna happen to you, right? So it has no direct, sensible impact on our day-to-day living. Suppose I ask to you or discuss with you, how do we stitch a broken cloth, a broken pants? Well, you would see that it is important. You would see the effect, and you would see the consequence of learning such a thing. Whereas philosophy, really, you can't see truth as an object, right? And the term beautiful applies to many things. It's not a singular thing. So for example, that is beautiful, but what is the beautiful? And so philosophy really is, in fact, abstract in this kind of sense. But what I want to show in this discussion is that philosophy is beyond that. I think perceiving philosophy as being merely metaphysical or beyond the what we see physically is an aberration, really. It's a misunderstanding as to what philosophy should be and why should it matter in our day-to-day living, that it is part integral to our life, for ourselves and for other people. So I'd like to start by sharing this painting made by Peter Bruegel the Elder in 1568. And he called this the parable of the blind, or the blind leading the blind. And it depicts a group of men walking in a specific direction, with its leader at the very forefront, tripping himself up. And the guy behind him is about to share the same fate as well. So, perceiving the painting as is, we would see that what's the significance behind this? It's literally just blind men walking, but to me, it really depicts one of the many ways through which philosophy begins. And this question is formulated as, what are the sense of direction of people? No? So when we ask what is their sense of direction, what really are the ends of their action, their beliefs, their values in life, no? So for example, when we follow laws, rules, norms, when we follow them because the group tells us to do so, the sense of direction dissipates in the sense that our agency, our authority to decide and to evaluate the surrounding and ourselves too, it becomes futile. It no longer means anything because we are merely following what has been said, what has been done. And to me, philosophy offers us an eye. And this offering of an eye is not like a third eye or like becoming a Buddha, reaching enlightenment. No, really, having your eyes open is really about seeing the values of things, seeing the good and even the bad things in life, and having to discern them in their own rights. So that is how I view philosophy, and it's one of the many ways to start with philosophy. No, so let's proceed. uh, what we have right now are pictures of flowers, and we would think of them, they're really beautiful. No, and this fascination over nature is not really just about flowers and their petals. It's all about the things in life, no, like the good act that your friend did to you and it really fascinated you, or the kind animals like cats, dogs that show their affection to you. And this perception of beauty, this perception of fascination over things, this is integral to us, no? It happens to our day to day living. The appreciation of one thing or another is the discernment of their certain aspects. Are they true? Are they good? Are they beautiful? Those are the kind of perceptions we view in life, no? So philosophy really is everywhere. And so to ask what is the truth, and so to ask what is the good, and so to ask what is the beautiful, these three are the pillars of philosophy. They make the necessary pillar so as to establish these ideas through which we build using these foundations, no? So you might ask, so what, no, what really is philosophy, no? So one of the interesting thought idea I have about philosophy is that philosophy is a jeepney, no? What do you mean? A jeep, yung jeep na sinasakyan natin pagpapasok na tayo, it goes through several destinations. It follows some kind of route that we have to that we go to. And in the jeepney, we would encounter different people. We would have to be with them. And to me, this association with other people, this going to of destinations and places really are to me the represent a representation of philosophy, because I see philosophy as a vehicle of ceaseless journey of knowledge, of truth. And so this ceaseless vehicle offers us some kind of clarity in life. And when we have clarity in life, we begin to understand what is good, what is true, what is logical, and this in turn benefit us in our daily living as we would see later on. So my point is that unless we view philosophy as something that is rooted in our everyday life, it remains annoying and irrelevant to many people. Because when you understand philosophy as being this, again, purely metaphysical, you remove its spirit, no? Philosophy should start at our daily experiences. It should never be about the abstract things alone, no? Because philosophy really is more than that. So the question to you would be simple, and that is, what is your philosophy in life? And that is one of the questions typically asked in a introduce yourself scenario in schools, no? So let's talk about the usage of the term philosophy in here. So philosophy in this context could refer to a guiding principle or value, no? So in other words, this is the principle or the kind of appreciation that we use to orient ourselves in a particular action. It's a guiding principle, no? So it could also be a rationale or a cause. And the rationale pertains to the purpose, to the cause, to the reason behind the things as they seem. So, for example, of a guiding principle would be one of the typically stated philosophy in life, and that is only dead fish go with the flow. No, so it's an interesting guiding principle, and that is a philosophy. No? So a philosophy could also refer to a rationale. A rationale of an ice cream could be that it is a cold, fleeting indulgence that satisfies the not only the sensory as in the taste part of man, but also its eyes, no, its vision. I mean, an ice cream looks visually stunning, no? So that is a rationale. So, however, we would like to raise into attention the problem with philosophy. The problem with philosophy precisely is that it is often perceived as an elite, detached place for academics in ivory towers. So, in other words, the philosophy often seem like it holds no purpose so as to the daily living of men. So, for example, when a researcher conducts uh, a research about epistemology or the study of knowledge, I mean, what's people going to do with that? It holds no purpose. No? So, to add, highfalutin language and technical jargon leaves outsiders sleepy or bored. I mean, when you heard Immanuel Kant's transcendental idealism or Plato's theory of the forms, I mean, what? No? So, really, that is the problem with philosophy. This is why philosophy currently encounters a major public relations or PR problem. It needs to fix itself so as to make people relate to them. So, as Ann Quito said in one of her articles, philosophy isn't very popular in the Philippines because uh, figures of today that offer entertainment would really overpower philosophers. I mean, like Beyonce, we always trump Barts, as I said, or that Rihanna rules over recur any day. Tapos, when we say philosophy, we are referring to philosopho. And when the perception about being a philosopher is that you are foolish or that you are attempting stupid explanations over simple things, no? So, the philosophy really has a bad rap, not only in global context, but particularly in the Philippine context, no? So, the term philosopher really has seeped into the academic consciousness with damaging effect. So, I'd like to share one of the ideas in the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy written by Robert Audi. And it's that no short of definition about philosophy is adequate. Nothing of a definition would ever suffice to fit philosophy in that box. So it will not do to define philosophy in the etymological way many have as the love of wisdom. Because the typical classes will start by saying philosophy etymologically means love of wisdom, as philo or philein refers to love, and Sophie or Sophia refers to wisdom. I mean, what kind of definition is that? You do not define philosophy merely by saying that it is a love of wisdom, because what even is loving wisdom all about? No? So this definition, this trying to fit into a box kind of definition, is problematic in the sense that even loving wisdom can be unphilosophical. No? But I'll give an example. Say you have an uncle who really knows a lot about cars, and your uncle has a history of carnapping cars. So he gives you his wisdom about the car locks and how do we unlock them without the key. So in this sense, your uncle is giving you wisdom. And so when you follow this wisdom, you said, I might do that because, well, it's an effective one. My uncle's never been caught. And then when the time comes that you carnap a car, You got caught, you got jailed. So that wisdom that you thought was good actually led to bad consequences. So that is unphilosophical. Or that you follow one wisdom over the other. Like you dogmatically submit yourself into them, never questioning their authority. So loving that wisdom can be unphilosophical too. So that kind of definition never suffices. So granting that it is natural for many philosophers to love wisdom and for many lovers of wisdom to be inspired to pursue philosophy, a lover of wisdom can be quite unphilosophical. And even a good philosopher can be wise in at most a few domains of inquiry. So that is not the complete definition of philosophy. So he goes to define philosophy as the critical, normally systematic study of an unlimited range of ideas and issues. So when he says unlimited, we do not refer to everything as in everything. So for example, your PC caught on fire. What would you do? Of course, you would not call a philosopher. He will not be able to solve that if he does not know about computer parts. Rather, you would call a technician that is affluent enough to fix that kind of problem. So when we say unlimited, we are referring to the lens of the principles behind them, the rationale behind them. So, for example, what is the ethics of this kind of subject? What is doing this kind of thing good? What contribution does it have? Does it give to society? And those kind of questions apply to all. Like, is using cell phone for 24 hours good? No? So it goes on and on and on. So, Pasidi, in his book Philosophy of Man, defines philosophy in three terms. Though there are four, let's focus on the three. Philosophy, according to Pasidi, is a scientia. Now, let's separate the definition of scientia to a science. We would go to that. And that philosophy is a natural light of reason, and that philosophy is a study of all things, like what we said earlier. So scientia really refers to the medieval Latin scientia. And scientia could really refer to a rigorous study, body of knowledge that could be organized in the form of syllogistic demonstrations from self-evident premises. So when you say that you can demonstrate those knowledge syllogistically, we mean to say that we can deduce those knowledge so as to determine their validity by using premises to draw conclusions from them. So Socrates is man. Man is mortal. Every man is mortal. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So that's the kind of definition, example of a syllogistic demonstrations from self-evident premises. No? So, scientia really is the term that early modern philosophers applied to a certain kind of demonstrative knowledge. Now, so theology in this sense is a scientia too. So, scientia was the name for demonstrative knowledge from first principles, as what we have said. So, historically, uh, philosophy really is the father or mother of, if not all, many of the academic subjects that we have today, including science. You know, Isaac Newton's most famous book was called Natural Philosophy, no? The Principia. In this sense, we can understand that philosophy, in the means of its one of its kind, natural philosophy, was really the early version of science. And then from the single discipline comes different offshoots like psychology and other social sciences, and their natural sciences too. So really it's a cool thing that philosophy is a scientia. So, one of the most rather assertive definition by Payne, which is a professor in a college in America, stated that philosophy is a rational inquiry of everything except science, which is similar to what we said again earlier. Yet, as some philosopher, particularly the logical positivists, said that we can't really know things beyond the sciences. In other words, outside the sciences, there's really no certitude so as to their validity and truthfulness. No? So, his response was that he asked this question that what branch of science addresses a question of whether or not science covers all of rational inquiry? So in other words, sige, sinabi mo na you can't really know things beyond the science. And you are now asking, uh, from that point on, that it covers all rational inquiry. So what kind of branch of science is this, that this kind of questioning? No? So the answer is that whether or not science can answer every question is in itself not a scientific issue. It is not provable by a beaker or some scientific physical tool. No? So the question really is concerned about the limits of human knowledge and its inquiries. No? And these in turn are philosophical questions. This is epistemology, which is one of the branch of philosophy. No? So that's the most interesting part. And then philosophy could really be understood as a war of ideas between philosophers. No? So in this picture, you would see Plato, Aristotle, Descartes, Locke, Aquinas, Leibniz, Hume, Marx, Hegel, Kant, Schopenhauer fighting each other's ideas. No? So for example, Plato in his Theory of the Forms contended that all things that we see in here are imperfect copies, representations of their most perfect being. And these most perfect beings are unreachable to us. So, uh, and these most perfect forms, ideals of all things in life is a separate world. It's beyond us. No? And so Aristotle would dispute that by saying that why do you want to pursue something that is unknowable to you when the truth is already right here? We can know things in this world. So I don't know why we have to go to the other, to this kind of utopic, rather speculative dimension of such. And then Descartes would dispute this Aquinas and Aristotle by saying that uh, since these two focus on the experience being the uh, primary means of knowledge, Descartes would say that the mind holds supreme in obtaining knowledge, and it would go and go and go to Kant's transcendental idealism and to Hegel's dialectical process, the absolute, and all that. So it's really a long list of this dispute. So my point is that if it's certainty that you are looking for in philosophy, you are never gonna find it because certainty defeats the purpose of philosophy. What philosophy aims to do is to provide clarity. Because when you are certain about these things, you are no longer philosophizing such that reflection itself requires some kind of mystery. And this mystery pertains to the different kinds of meanings in life. And some things in life really have no certainty. We can't really know things for certain. For example, what happens when we die? What does love mean? And how do we mourn when one of our loved ones die? That does not give a certain answer. It requires philosophy to answer those kind of things, no? Science won't give you the necessary beakers to be a good person. No? So, my point is that since, di ba nga, philosophy is a jeepney, as we would go inside the jeepney, we would learn a lot of things not only about the other people na kasama natin, not only of the destination that we would go to, but to ourselves also. We would know ourselves also. And so, this kind of uh, exploration really requires passion. No? It requires passion because it's ceaseless. It's never gonna stop. And when it stops, it's no longer philosophy. So my point is that philosophy requires passion. And passion really helps us in life. It gives us something to live for. No? So Plato, in one of his books, said that philosophy really is ano, being ready to die, being ready to face death. What he means by that is not about knowing what happens when we die. We can't know that. It's not about what do we do as to have an itinerary in the final day of our life. Rather, what he tells us is to seize life, to begin living. You know, when you seize life, you see the problems of our world and you commit yourself to this problem by fixing them. Since this is the world, this is the reality that we can change, not the other world, not the other dimensions and stuff. So, philosophy really asks us to seize life. No? So, in short, if we are to ask ourselves what is the definition of philosophy, as Professor Emerita Quito, one of the most renowned Filipino philosophers we have, we can say that we cannot give a definition because our inquiry knows no limits. So to limit the definition of philosophy is to limit the boundaries of human inquiry also. So all speculations, however, have their own truth, but we can only delve into philosophy by actually experiencing it. So for example, uh, when a foreigner would ask you what is what does mango taste like, for example, he does not know what a mango tastes like, and no matter how much you tell that foreigner that it tastes like this sweet kind of juicy fruity taste, he will never understand the mangoness of mango. He can only do so by tasting the mango. So that's what philosophy asks of us. We cannot understand, for example, the complexity of a lion when we are merely watching it on a TV because uh, understanding the complexity of a lion requires more than that. I mean, if you want to be an expert on animal, you have to do more than that. No? So to me, that is what philosophy asks. That we actually experience it. Ang ginagawa kasi natin, hindi natin ah, ina-apply sa buhay yung natutuhan natin sa filosofiya. Kaya nawawalan siya ng saysay, no? So, the definition given by Prof. Quito is that philosophy is a discipline where the questions are more important than the answers and every answer becomes a new question because that is how it's supposed to be. You've got to have some passion in you to pursue those kinds of things in life. And they give life meaning. So, as Bertrand Russell would say, a philosopher, between theology and science, there is a no man's land exposed to attack from both sides. This no man's land is philosophy. So, let's take a look at the former clause of this sentence theology. So, theology really is something of dogmatic belief. Meaning, when we say we hold these values, these ideas to be true in themselves, without prejudice, without question to any of these kind of questions, no? Whereas science is about being skeptic almost, really, about the things in life. We are going to question really the held beliefs. And this questioning would really go on practically forever. So between those two things, the dogmaticism and the skepticism, lies philosophy. Because philosophy requires some kind of presuppositions, it requires some premises. But we're not exactly questioning. We are not exactly submitting to the held beliefs, and we are rather bringing in the skepticism of science. So this no man's land is philosophy because nothing ever gets certain and nothing ever gets dogmatic. And we pursue human ideas and human inquiries in philosophy. So that is why it is a no man's land. It's everyone is on war, like I showed earlier. So what then is the point of philosophy? So since philosophy investigates practically every subject naman pala, we can understand that it's not just about some Greek dudes arguing what does it mean to be good. Therefore, it is very much a real subject. So let us cite some questions. No? So are ghost flood control projects ethical? That is a philosophy. When we ask whether doing that kind of thing or whether that thing is ethical, we are philosophizing, we are reflecting so as to the good that exists in that action or that object. So next is, should we vote for politicians that run away from accountability? Hopefully every one of us would say yes. So in this kind of questioning is philosophy, no? Because we are putting a burden of ethics to us. We are putting what does good, what does the right mean? What does it mean to do the right thing? So that is applying philosophy, no? So the method of philosophy really depends on the fact that human wonder connects known and unknown areas, prompting inquiries that initiate philosophizing. So we know something, we experience, for example, daily kinds of things in life, and then we would dig deeper beyond them so as to discover the unknown lessons behind them. So that is an act of philosophizing. So searching for reasons, causes, meanings, and goals satisfies this wonder. No? So investigation of formal reasons start from unquestioned experience. We go on to our daily living. We do not even question as to why we would do this job, as to why we would do such a thing, as to why we said such a thing. No? So we investigate those kinds of topics. So by using human reasoning as the primary tool to develop knowledge. In other words, philosophy is experiential because it is grounded on experience and rational by relying on analysis and synthesis. We mix things as they are. So philosophical inquiry requires both experience and reason. So you cannot philosophize if you have no experience. And many people will say, oh, you don't have to experience a thing for you to philosophize. Yes, that is true. The usage of experience here is of sensory awareness. So, for example, you have to have at least some sensory awareness to it. You've got to know what an apple is for you to understand what is an apple. No? So, philosophical inquiry requires both experience and reason. Otherwise, if I only use reason and I say some gibberish while doing the reason, for example, I say some gibberish right now. La, la, la. So, if I try to reason that out, it has no experience. People have no sensory awareness of such utterances. It holds nothing. So, experience provides the data and reason provides the analysis. So philosophy evolves alongside the human person who exists in and of the world. So that is the concern of philosophy. So let's take a look at one of my favorite philosophers quote by Immanuel Kant in his book The Critique of Pure Reason. So he says that the understanding is not capable of intuiting anything, and the senses are not capable of thinking anything. Only from their unification can cognition arise. No? So we need both experience and reason to make sense of things, to give knowledge from them. So we would eventually learn the kind of issue that Immanuel Kant was facing on, because there really was a debate between rationalists and the empiricists. The rationalists contended that it is through the mind that we know the things. It is the mind that is the supreme means of acquiring knowledge. And then the empiricists like John Locke would say that we are born as tabula rasa, as blank slates, as empty papers, and it is experience that allows us to make sense of things, no? And it was going with Leibniz in the rationalist side, giving this explanation of monads, or like basic units of reality that make sense of the world. Providing a framework that says that we can know things as they are, and there is already a thing before actually experiencing another sorts of stuff. And this debate would go and go for years and years and years, and then until Kant, one of the LeBron James of philosophy, replied to that problem, and it's really great. No? So let's take a look at philosophy locally. So I'd like to share a quote by Father Roque J. Ferriols. And Padre Roque really was a former professor in Ateneo de Manila. He unfortunately passed away in 2021. But he wrote many books and is known to be one of the pioneers of teaching, if not the pioneer, the Filipino language philosophy. So he said that sapagkat ang filosofiya ay ginagawa. He said this in the first parts of his book, Pambungad sa Metaphisika. So the context of this is that uh, imagine a biker, or imagine someone trying to learn how to ride a bike, and you are expected to teach that person to ride a bike. And then that person who is interested of riding a bike reads all things about the bike. He reads about its gears, its pedals, its handles, its lights, and all other stuff. And then this knowledge would prove nothing if you don't know how to bike. If you don't try how to ride a bike, it is futile per se. And so the synthesis of this knowledge necessitates that philosophy must be done. Sapagkat ang filosofiya ay ginagawa. Para maintindihan mo ang isang philosophical na bagay, kailangan mo itong gawin. Kailangan mo itong isabuhay. That is the nature of philosophy. So in other words, philosophy then is also life. It is life lived not only for itself but also for others. So when you, for example, ask, what does it mean to be good? What you are referring to is that how may I live so that I may not disturb the lives of other people? Or that how may I know myself if it not for the other people, the established language, the development that I gain through them, the dependence, the interdependence of one another, that no man is an island. That is the realization of philosophy. That philosophy is a life lived not only for itself but also for others. You orient your philosophy not only for yourself but for other people. I mean, when you gain passion so as to the problems of the world and its beauty, you help not only yourself, you also help other people. No? So it really refers to biological, social, political, linguistic aspects of man that we really depend on other people. No? So philosophy really is that. So what does it mean to be good? It needs to have some others. What does a beautiful thing mean? So if you are the only organism in a planet and there's no flowers, there's no butterflies, there's no rivers, I mean what really is beautiful? You have no object of comparison so as to determine what is beautiful to your perception and what is not. So in other words, outside of life, no philosophy is possible. You can't philosophize what error means. No? It has to be grounded in experience, in the sensory awareness of people. And outside of others, no life is possible. No man lives for himself. You know, Aristotle in his book Politics says that we man are social animals and that the man who does not live with other people, who lives for himself, is either a beast or a god because you need other people, jobs, taxes, foods. It's all interplaying to form a society that orients itself to the good. So outside of others, no life is possible. No flowers, nothing, no animals, no trees, no people. Everything is senseless. No life is possible. No? So philosophy, again, really is a jeepney. You don't ride to jeepney to a jeepney and then you would go to no destination and then you would have no other people to meet. That is not representative of life at all. Philosophy presupposes that kind of knowledge that you have to live with other people in relation to other people and that throughout your life you would encounter different situations, different problems, different scenarios. And philosophy gives you the vehicle for that. It gives you the clarity, never the certainty, but the clarity. The clarity to go and the clarity to pursue knowledge with all your passions. Eh, So, philosophy is also about the recognition of the agency of everyone. So, for example, the man at the left right is looking at the butterfly and the man on the right is looking at the butterfly as well. While they see one object, their experiences to the butterfly, their impressions to the butterfly, their perception to the butterfly is unique in themselves, no? It, so we when we for example say that outside of others no life is possible, we mean to say that the life itself is represented by many perceptions, many feelings and many perspectives, no? And so arriving at your own beliefs, ideas and knowledge instead of having them handed down or forced upon you by society provides one of the greatest intellectual joys, no? So imagine having been taught a thing that you do not that is forced upon you. I mean that's one of the most horrible things. So going back to the blind leading the blind, uh following rules merely because it is forced upon you when you don't realize the good in them, or that even if you would realize that there are bad laws and you're still following them, or bad cultures, I mean, that's the point of having philosophy, to arrive at your own beliefs, ideas, and knowledge instead of having them handed down or forced upon you. It gives you an eye, and it's not just beneficial to you, it's joyful to you. No? So, what really is the point of philosophy is tulundagin mo, to jump into it, as Padre Roque would say. No? He gives this scenario again in Pambungan sa Metaphysica about students learning how to swim. And again, They are really talking about the swimming pool and all that. And then how would you know what the swimming pool is like if you don't swim? You have to swim. So jump into it. You gotta immerse yourself to it. While you can hear the waves of the river or the swimming pool, while you can see the waves of a swimming pool, you cannot know what the swimming pool is like if you do not experience it yourself. The experiencing part really provides the necessary picture, the necessary understanding so as to understand the gravity, the truthfulness, and the beauty behind the objects of our daily living. So, to end this presentation, I'd like to share a quote, and it's one of the Greek maxims on the temple of Apollo at Delphi, and it is to know thyself. This really is one of the pinnacles of philosophy, and that is to know thyself, to know yourself. And knowing yourself means what can I do to other people? What might I like? And knowing yourself means knowing the limitations of what you can do. Knowing yourself means having your own belief so as to not become drowned by the uh, rather insults of other people around you. I mean, if everyone's going to be the biggest, greatest critic of yourself, it should be you. So, for example, when you do one thing, when you say one thing, the person that should tell you what to do or whether if it's right or wrong should be yourself. You have to know thyself. And knowing oneself requires more than necessity. It requires passion. Passion. No? So thank you for listening to the lecture.